Will Glenn Russell Dubin please come forward as his degree is conferred by State University trustee Kari Stoller? Glenn, you have demonstrated that hard work and education is the key to success. As an active Stony Brook University alumnus and intelligent investor with philanthropic vision, your generosity has touched the lives of so many, from being a founding member of the Robin Hood Foundation to serving as a board member of the Museum of Modern Art and funding both the Dubin Breast Center at Mount Sinai Medical Center and the Dubin Family Athletic Performance Center to Stony Brook University Departments of Athletics. You have tirelessly supported righteous endeavors. You are an inspiration, and you embody the ideals of a true Stony Brook sea wolf. For your commitment to improving the lives of others and efforts to enhance Stony Brook University, the State University of New York is proud to bestow upon you the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the State University Board of Trustees, the faculty of the State University of New York concurring, I confer upon you an honorary degree, honoris causa, and invest upon you with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. In token thereof, I direct that you be provided with a diploma and vested with the hood representative of the specific degree conferred.
I would now like to invite Glenn Dubin to come forward and deliver a commencement address.
President Stanley, members of the Board of Trustees of the State University of New York, and my friend, Athletic Director Jim Fiore, it's a great honor for me to be back at Stony Brook and receive this Doctorate of Letters. And for those classmates and professors who remember me here from the late 1970s, I'm sure it's equally a great surprise. Previous recipients of this distinguished award include Nobel Prize-winning economist Gary Becker, famed paleontologist Richard Leakey, and award-winning mathematician and philanthropist Jim Simons. I know you must be asking that very same question in the aftermath of the Great Recession and the resounding political message of the Occupy Wall Street movement. Why on earth is the school giving this honorary doctorate to a hedge fund guy? You're not alone. My wife, Eva, spent 8 grueling years, studying to get her medical degree from UCLA School of Medicine. And on the car ride out here, she too asked the question, "Darling, why are you getting a doctorate?" To be honest, I think she's just jealous that there'll now be 2 Dr. Dubins in the family. But I can only surmise why I'm being given this honor, but I bet it has something to do with the fact that there are a lot of similarities between you and me. Yes, that's right. Members of the class of 2012 and me. When I was about to graduate Stony Brook in 1978. Yes, that is right. You and I are very similar in a number of important ways. Let me explain. My mother was an immigrant from Austria who fled the Nazis and came to America in 1939. My father was a second-generation American whose family came from Russia. I grew up in Washington Heights, a working-class neighborhood. I told you there were similarities. A working-class neighborhood in northern Manhattan. My father drove a taxi. He worked very long and hard hours to provide a better life for his family. Sound familiar? I see there's some parents nodding their heads. I was the first one in my family to go to college. Now, I know that sounds familiar. In my class of 1978, roughly 37% of the graduates were the first members of their family to graduate from college. I have been told that roughly 30% of those of you sitting here in red cap and gown are also the first in your family to graduate from college. Okay, do I have your attention now? So I left Stony Brook in 1978 with a degree in economics, no family connections in business, and one wool pinstripe suit that I bought on sale for $90 to make a good impression in my job interviews, which I plan to start immediately after taking the summer off. Okay, life lesson number one. If you're going on job interviews in New York at the end of August, don't wear a wool suit. Lesson number two. I was sure that I wanted to work on Wall Street, so I made a list of Wall Street companies where I could get an interview. There were 30 firms back then. Now, after 3 decades of mergers, acquisitions, and bankruptcies, there wouldn't be more than 5 firms on that list. Remember, 30 firms on my list. After 2 months of pounding the pavement and grueling interviews, I was 0 for 29. That's right, 29 interviews and 0 job offers. My very last interview was with a firm called E.F. Hutton, number 30 on my list. Miraculously, I got the job. I often wonder what would have happened if there were only 29 companies back then and not 30. I'm sure I'd be doing something much different today, probably picking up a summons to appear in Riverhead County Court as opposed to picking up a degree here at Stony Brook. But I learned from my mistakes. I took notes after every single one of my 29 failed interviews, self-correcting my interviewing skills and learning and improving as I went on. So here we go. Life lesson number 2. You will experience failures, both in your personal life and in your career. I hope you won't fail as spectacularly as I did and be 0 for 29 in your first 29 interviews. But some failures in life are absolutely inevitable. Work through them. And most importantly, learn from those mistakes. When I started at E.F. Hutton as a retail broker, I set out to build a book of business or client relationships. So I would smile and dial all day long pitching investment products. After a few years of this, I noticed something very interesting. Almost all the investors that I spoke to were either focused on stocks and bonds, or in a few very unusual cases, commodities. No investors that I spoke to in the early 80s thought about the possibilities and the benefits of combining these asset classes in a single investment portfolio. Regardless of how sophisticated you were, your investment portfolio was comprised of stocks and bonds, or if you were really out there, commodities like gold and silver, or agricultural commodities like soybeans, wheat, and corn, which you could buy in the futures exchanges. The idea of combining them was unheard of back then. One day, reading through an investment journal, I came across a reference in an academic paper that had been written by a Harvard professor by the name of John Lintner. Now, let me stop right here for a moment and point something out. Although I am recounting an absolutely true story, and I did read about Professor Lintner in a Harvard investment journal, I don't want you to get the idea that I spent a good deal of my time back then reading through academic journals. Remember, at this point in my life, I'm a bachelor, I'm in my mid-20s, living in Manhattan. Trust me, I wasn't reading academic journals every night. Anyway, the basis of the Lintner study was that by combining assets within traditional portfolios of bonds and stocks, you could effectively smooth out the volatility and enhance returns over time. This was absolutely an aha moment. Anyway, my partner at the time, Henry Suega, who was also a Stony Brook alum, and I both used this study to facilitate discussions with a number of very sophisticated institutional investors. The end result was that we created one of the very first fund-of-funds business models combining stocks, bonds, and commodity assets. Today, the fund-of-funds industry is estimated to have over $500 billion of assets under management. Now, we certainly could have patted ourselves on the back and congratulated each other for creating one of the early fund-of-funds businesses, but we actually thought there was a better way to apply professional interest studies. Instead of acting as a manager of managers and allocating capital to third-party hedge fund advisors, why not take that concept of portfolio diversification and apply it internally to a hedge fund that we would manage ourselves using uncorrelated investment strategies? So in 1992, we did just that, and we launched Highbridge Capital, one of the hedge fund industry's first multi-strategy funds. Now I'm going to fast forward 20 years and simply tell you that Highbridge has grown from a small multi-strategy hedge fund in 1992 into a $30 billion alternative asset management institution today with offices in New York, London, Hong Kong, and Sao Paulo. The purpose of me describing this journey is not to boast about the success of the company I co-founded 20 years ago, but rather to point out a very important ingredient that's been a vital part of its success: adaptation. If you go into the dictionary and look up adaptation, it reads, quote, "a change in structure, function, or form that improves the chances of survival and success within a given environment." So whether you're talking about plants, animals, or hedge fund businesses, survival depends on adapting to an ever-changing environment. All right, that's lesson number 3. Regardless of whether your goal is to become a teacher, a doctor, an engineer, or a business person, to be successful long-term, to be at the top of your game, you must constantly evolve and adapt to your surroundings. There's one constant in life: things will change. So I would like to conclude with a few thoughts. Everyone is dealt a hand of cards at birth. With them come possibilities, risks, and responsibilities. What you do with those cards is up to each of you. The sum of your choices, however, equals how you will live your lives. I challenge all of the graduates in the class of 2012 to play the cards you have been dealt to the very best of your abilities. You're graduating from a great academic institution into a world of opportunity. That's right, a world of opportunity. Don't be discouraged when looking at the economic headlines showing that the national unemployment rate is 8% or that the economy is growing at a meager 2% a year. When I graduated from Stony Brook in 1978, the economic environment was so bad, economists created something called the misery index. That's right, the misery index. It was an index that added up the unemployment rate and the inflation rate. The misery index back then in 1978 was at its high point because we were in a period of economic stagflation. Low growth, high unemployment, high inflation. I promise you, not a healthy combination. In spite of this, think of the extraordinary advances and opportunities that have been seen over the last 30 years in medicine, finance, engineering, science, and telecommunications. In medicine, we've eradicated smallpox. We have had major advances in fighting cancer and the treatment of heart disease. Biotechnologies have successfully mapped the human genome. The list goes on. In finance, in spite of going through numerous recessions, market crashes, and most recently a full-blown financial crisis, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has gone from 800 in 1979 to over 12,000 today. Perhaps the biggest breakthroughs have been in technology and communication. We've gone from analog to digital. We have the internet, we have Google, we have Microsoft, we have Apple, smartphones, and iPads. The breakthroughs over the last 30 years have been nothing short of transformational. Yes, those are the opportunities of my generation, but without question, you will have yours as well. So class of 2012, make the very best of those opportunities and good luck.